Bitcoin is back at 66,400 US dollars. I took a day off and we're exactly where we were the day before. Why? Trump's shit show just keeps going on, one to one. Yesterday, I deliberately took a day off just to switch off a bit, to put all the crap aside for a while, but it just didn't work out 100%. Then yesterday morning, there were already rumors that a speech would take place, or rather, a speech will take place. And then it was said, in the evening, I think around 9 o'clock, yes, it will be a positive speech. In 2 or 3 weeks, it'll all be over. And what does Trump do not even 5 or 6 hours later? Stocks drop and oil climbs as Trump vows to hit Iran extremely hard, and he wants to bomb it back to the Stone Age. These are statements coming from someone who less than 24 hours earlier was still talking about peace, saying, in 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be gone, take care of your own Strait of Hormuz. Now, these kinds of statements are being made. So much for the topic and so much for the credibility of the USA and of Trump. Bitcoin and the cryptos, they're dropping for now. And I'll be honest with you, I'm glad about it. It has to happen. In my opinion, we're still way, way too high. The drop last night, when I look at the bond markets, we'll take a calm look at all of this now. We'll calmly look at everything now, at least everything that's important. And that's not the only concern we have globally at the moment. So much for that. There's quite a bit to discuss. But before we get started, as always, feel free to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And of course, feel free to join the free Telegram talk and Signal group. If you're interested in updates, news, and signals, you're welcome to join. You'll find the link for that for free down in the video description. And if you're still looking for an exchange where you can trade everything we discuss here, whether it's stocks, Forex, or crypto, you can do it all with my partner, Exchange BingX. At the moment, you still have 14 days left to sign up, and then you'll get VIP 2 status for 1 month, which means reduced fees and other benefits. And of course, there's also a deposit event. If you deposit, for example, 500 USDT, you'll receive 120 USDT as a bonus voucher. So check out the link below in the video description, the first link. All right, let's get started. As I said, Bitcoin is at 66,400 US dollars. By the way, tonight at 7 p.m., there will be another live stream for everyone who missed me. So let's go through things one by one. Yeah. Let's go through one thing at a time. Secret codes in Wuhan. Fees get ships through Iran. Hormuz toll booth. So the Strait of Hormuz is somehow open, but also somehow not. Now, the Iranian government is demanding fees in Wuhan, that is, in Chinese yuan. This way, they bypass the dollar, which is of course good for China, because China then earns a bit more from it and the Chinese currency rises a bit more as a reserve currency. Trump, on the other hand, says he couldn't care less about what's going on over there, in the Strait of Hormuz. That's why oil prices have climbed significantly again. That's pretty cool. Oil jumps on Trump's war threats, stocks rally fades. Yeah, we can take a quick look at that before we move on to crypto, because oil is back at $105. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. If you think back to the whole shit show just a week or a week and a half ago, that was Trump's first post, satisfied. And since then, it's just been a little bit like that. And immediately, it's another moonshot right in everyone's faces, and then also in the stock markets. At the moment, it's always the same pattern repeating itself. Honestly, the stock markets aren't really falling for it anymore. I completely understand that. And as I said, as long as the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, not much is really going to change, because then the oil price will keep rising, gas prices will go up, and inflation will continue to climb. And as long as Trump doesn't somehow launch a ground offensive, cough, cough, I think that's going to happen sooner or later, cough, cough, as long as that's the case, we're just going to keep having problems with this whole issue, in my opinion. And because oil has gone up, we're basically seeing the whole turnaround again in crypto. Crypto is dropping significantly just with a big fat candle. And if we also look at the more important data at the same time, firstly, point number 1. The volatility index is still high, nothing has changed. Then let's move on to government bonds. Over to them. They're actually much more interesting. The 2-year bonds went from 3.7 to 3.9 again this morning. Have fun. 5-year bonds are over 4%. Have fun. And then we also have the 10-year bonds here. The 10-year bonds are back at 4.4%. Thank you, Trump. You did a great job. After the bonds went down a bit, they're now back to the same level as before. The usual shit show mania. It's like a pattern. Uncertainty, Trump posts crap. Uncertainty, Trump posts crap. Uncertainty, Trump posts crap. And now we have uncertainty again. Congratulations. But that's not all, because the 20-year and 30-year bonds are approaching 5% again. And that's still not all. Let's take a look over at our friends in Japan. Japan, new all-time high with the 2-year government bonds. Have fun. Then we also have the 10-year bonds here. The 10-year bonds have now surpassed the high from January 26th. We're at 2.4%. And that's not exactly funny, because if we look at the next news, weak Japan bond sale adds to global sale off after Trump address. It's not just about Iran or anything like that. You know what's brewing over in Japan? That's the carry trade, and Japan has to raise interest rates because the yen, if we take a quick look at it, I know we're not in the Forex section yet, but it all ties together. The yen is performing catastrophically. And the bond auctions, they were just absolutely terrible. No one wants to buy Japanese bonds or debt securities or anything like that. Who's surprised? And then you get a speech like that from Donald Trump about the Strait of Hormuz. Japan is dependent on that. Japan has to raise interest rates. And such 10-year bonds, or generally speaking, they simply can't afford that in the long run. That's the problem with such a weak currency. This is going to get very, very interesting, but that's just how it is. Sometimes things just drop like that. No one wants Japanese bonds. That's why the bond market, again, absolutely to the moon. Of course, this puts additional pressure on Bitcoin and other stock markets. Strange. If we take a look at the volume, no, wrong one. Here. This is the volume. The volume is still at 20 million. Last night, we were just back at 10 million again. The market is dead. Nothing has changed about that, even on the one day I was absent. The ETFs are still unchanged. Let's dive a little deeper. CFD spot demand, not really there. Futures are being driven again. Let's take a look at the heat map. Still the same cluster, 65. And the big major cluster at 64, we'll check that with high block. There, in the end, we don't really see that much lying around. But let's quickly switch to the monthly time frame and take a look at the whole topic. Let's take a closer look at it. There, we see it more clearly. So here in the heat map, we see it around 64 to 63.7, but that's just the short-term heat map. Actually, now let's go back to the high block heat map. Let's take a look at the whole thing. Here on the monthly, we have a lot of liquidity, and the next level would be around 57,000 to 56,000 US dollars. And I'll tell you, it wouldn't surprise me if we see that over the weekend as well. Depending on whether we get a ground offensive now or not, or whether Trump has completely lost his mind now over the weekend or going into the weekend. I mean, we're talking about the possibility of a ground offensive taking place. The deadline runs until the 6th of April. Let's see if anything happens in that regard at all, if it continues to be perceived. Otherwise, this wick here will be filled sooner or later. The volume is dead. The bond markets are completely under pressure. The bond markets are under pressure. Gold, by the way, before we continue, was back at $4,600. Yesterday, 4,700 US dollars. We're simply living in times of real uncertainty. How do I behave with Bitcoin? Basically, just like before. I'm still short. Nothing has changed. Really, nothing at all. Otherwise, we just have to wait and see for now. But the chart is still the same as a few days ago. Only the bullshit scale is now completely escalating thanks to Donald Trump. So let's just wait and see. Let's move over to the altcoins. How does it look for Ethereum? Hey, we've dropped again too. Nothing has changed. We're still just in this sideways accumulation range. Nothing changes. So then Solana, same picture. We're even below 80. Solana really took a hit. So here we actually see a bit more change. That's a good sign for sooner or later to maybe pick up this brick down here at around $67. Let's move over to the traditional, or rather to the Forex markets. First, oil again. Oil at $105 is catastrophic. The longer we stay at these levels, we've been up here for over a month or almost a month now. At these levels, it's catastrophic for inflation, the economy, and everything else. This will have fatal consequences for the coming months. And if this whole thing drags on for another 4 weeks, after Trump, 2 to 3 weeks, then we can stretch this out to 2 to 3 months, because honestly, no one can believe all this talk anymore. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's really going to get fun, in my opinion. Euro, US dollar, of course, is tanking again, because basically it's the same story. Then, looking at the dollar, we see that the dollar is clearly picking up momentum again. A strong dollar is yet another sign of this. The stock markets will likely then be sold off. We see the same thing with gold. Gold moved towards $4,800 yesterday. But for me, the zone to ultimately secure my position here, where we were, had clearly increased. The position is closed. I'll wait and see. Because what I could well imagine now is that we simply go all the way down here again, and then definitely still see this wiki at 4,100 to 4,100 US dollars. That means gold and silver. Am I now back to being a mountain after Trump's statements? More war is not necessarily a sign of gold. Bond markets are under pressure. People are rushing into the bond markets. People are rushing into bond markets, at least in the US. The DXY, that is the US dollar, is rising, which is bad for the dollar. Inflation is rising, which in turn means that we will probably still have to expect further interest rate hikes. That's just the short summary. It could be expanded much further. Shall we move on to the traditional markets? Let's go over DAX. The DAX was positive yesterday, just like everything else. But today it will probably tank completely again. Sorry for the language. But we can already see it with the Dow Jones. It's going significantly down. So whether this zone will still hold here after Trump's announcement, unless he comes out again today around, let's say, between 10 and 2 o'clock, I'll stick with my usual times, or let's say 11 to 3 o'clock because of the time change in Germany. I can well imagine that another announcement will come to bring down government bonds. The market is an absolute shit show. This isn't a market anymore. This is a Trump market. And this is purely a news-driven market. NASDAQ, that was yesterday. Futures were absolutely deep in the red. S&P 500, 6,575. Now this morning, 6,485. Just another 100 points down. After the gains we made yesterday. But one thing has to be said. Our fractal is working well. The move yesterday was a bit too fast, but otherwise, in terms of the height, if we adjust it like this, perfect. We're on track here, possibly about to experience our next move down and an even bigger escalation, which could, I'd say, swing the stock market completely into the basement. And then we can be happy because we'll be able to buy in cheaply again. You notice, guys, sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's just downright embarrassing what's happening in the markets, but you just have to make the best of it. That's the other thing. You have to make the best of it. You have to take the trades when there's something to trade. And otherwise, just be happy about cheaper buying opportunities. We'll definitely talk again tonight, once again at 7 p.m. for the live stream. After that, I'll also be live again at 8:15 p.m. on KSNC. I'll send you all the link for that as well, okay? Otherwise, I'd say that's it from my side until tonight at 7 p.m. on YouTube, on Twitch, on Kick. Don't worry too much, enjoy life, and we'll talk again tonight. Until then, ciao, ciao, and as always, stay cool.